Hi everybody, my name is Kate and welcome to another Saturday session with Exam Revision. So today we're going to be going through financial maths for junior cycle higher level students. Okay, in your book this may be called applied arithmetic. Okay, so it's everything to do with money, tax, currency, etc. Okay, so by the end of the session we should be able to calculate income tax and net pay. It's a really common exam question. Calculate markup and margin, they're to do with profit and loss. Then use the compound interest formula, calculate USC, and also do some currency conversions. So we're going to start, we're just going to do a quick recap of percentages, okay, because a lot of this chapter is to do with finding 20% of gross income or finding 20% of the cost price. Okay, so we just need to be able to find our percentages really confidently. Then we're going to look at income tax and net income and the formulas used for those. Then we're going to be able to calculate USC, the compound interest formula, currency conversion, and then we'll look at profit and loss then at the end. Okay, so we're going to start our quick review of percentages. So the question could be, find 20% of 600. Now, in your junior cert, it's unlikely that a question this straightforward will come up, but we'll definitely be using this in our questions. Okay, so first I'm going to change 20% to a decimal. So 20% is 0.2. Okay, if you're unsure of that, okay, to find the percentage as a decimal, just divide by 100. Okay, so we're looking for 20% of 600. Now a little tip, the word of always means multiply. Okay, so we're going to multiply 600 by the decimal, which is 0.2. So 600 by 0.2, that's going to give me 120. Okay, there's no units or anything here, it was just a generic question. But 20% of 600 multiply 600 by 0.2. Now, next one then, a little bit trickier. So we're going to deduct 17% from 340. I'm going to do it exactly the same way. So 17%, to find that as a decimal, I'll divide by 100. So 17 divided by 100 will give me 0.17. Okay, now we want to deduct or subtract 17% from 340. Okay, so we're going to find 17% of 340 first. So 17% of 340 7 will be 57.8. Now, that's the 17%. We didn't want 17% of 340, we wanted to deduct it. So what we're going to do, we're going to subtract 340 minus 57.8. And we will get out 282.2. Okay, so there we found the 17% and we just subtracted our answer from the original number. Okay, there is another way you could do that as well. You could, instead of finding the 17%, okay, you could find, so 100% minus 17% is equal to 83%. So you could just find 83% of 340. And we should get out the same answer. We do, so we get out 282.2. Now I would consider this first method much easier when you just find the 17% and you subtract it from your original number. Okay, so just a quick review of percentages before you go any further. Okay, if you're a little bit rusty on that, you need to go back and find when you did this in class and just go back through it. Okay, because percentages are going to be super important for this chapter. Okay, now on to our first big section. Okay, really common in exams is income tax and net pay. Now, there's a few formulas for this. Okay, these formulas aren't given to you. What I find is when people tend to practice with them a bit, they actually end up learning them. So the best way to learn these is just practice using them. Okay, so we're going to be using these words throughout this section. So we've standard tax. Okay, to find your standard tax, it's the standard rate cut off multiplied by the standard rate. Okay, that standard rate will be a percentage. Okay, so we'll change it to a decimal just like we did there with the percentages. Okay, so everyone has to pay that standard rate. Okay, depending on how much you earn, then you might have to pay a higher tax as well. Okay, so to find the higher tax, you need to know the income above the standard rate cutoff multiplied by the higher rate. Okay, again, that higher rate will be a percentage. Then to find your gross tax, okay, you just add the first two together, so your standard tax and higher tax. Now, you don't necessarily have to pay all of that gross tax, okay? So the tax you actually have to pay is your tax payable, and that'll be your gross tax minus your tax credit, okay? That's really important, that minus sign there, okay? People always get mixed up and make that a plus, okay? How I remember that's a minus is I think of my tax credit like a present from the government. Okay, so tax credit is a good thing, okay? The government basically tells you, or revenue basically tells you, okay, you're supposed to be paying the original number there, your gross tax, but actually we're going to take a little bit off of that. Okay, so make sure that's a minus sign. That's probably one of the most common mistakes here. And then your net income is your gross tax minus the tax you have to pay and any other deductions. So sometimes there might be pension deductions, union deductions, etc. Okay. So we're going to do a question and then that should all become clear. I have my formulas just copied up there in the top right hand corner. So we're going to be referring to those all the time. Now, when I'm reading my question, I'm going to be kind of marking off key bits of information as I go through it. So Michael is earning 58,000 per annum. Okay. So 58,000 per year, per annum just means per year. He has a standard rate cut off of 32,000. He pays tax at a standard rate of 20%, so that's his standard rate, and 40% on the remainder of his earnings. So that's going to be his higher rate. He has tax credit of 3,000 and no other deductions. Calculate his net income. Okay, now these formulas over here, we're going to use those in order. Okay, so step one, we're going to calculate his standard tax. Okay, so standard tax is the standard rate cut off. We're told the cutoff is 32,000 and multiplied by the standard rate. The standard rate is 20%. So we're going to change that to a decimal, divide by 100, that'll be 0.2. Okay, so standard tax, 32,000 by 0.2 will give me 64,000. Okay, so that's his standard tax. Now, that's only the amount he was taxed up until 32,000 of his income. On the rest then he needs to pay the higher tax. Okay, so I'm going to say income above cut off. Okay, so basically how much more does he earn than 32,000? So to find that, we're going to subtract, we'll have 58,000 minus 32,000. Okay, so he earns 26,000 above the cutoff. Okay, this must be taxed at higher rate. Okay, so I have my standard tax. I'm going to put a box around this. This is going to be an important number later. We'll also be able to calculate his higher tax now. So your higher tax, he hasn't paid any tax on this yet, so we need to tax that, and it's going to be taxed at the higher rate, which is 40%, so 0.4. Okay, so his higher tax then is 10,400. Okay, now to find his gross tax then, we're on formula 3 here now. We're going to do gross tax is standard tax, which we found to be 6,400, plus his higher tax, which is 10,400. Okay, so his gross tax is 16,800. Okay, so just using your calculations, Michael thinks he needs to pay 16,800. Okay, but then, so the tax he must actually pay isn't that much. Okay, so the government basically say, okay, you're supposed to be paying 6,800, but because of your job or your living situation, etc., there's loads of various factors, we're actually going to take a little bit off of that. Okay, so here his tax credits, we're going to subtract those, which is 3,000. So the tax he must actually pay is 13,800. Okay, now we can find his net income, which is what we're asked in the question, which is his gross income, which is 58,000, minus his tax payable, which is 13,800, or sorry, yeah, 13,800, and he's no other deductions, so there's no other like union fees or anything. So the amount he actually gets into his bank then is 44,200. Okay, so Michael, he says he earns 58,000, but in reality the amount he gets into his pocket is 44,200. Okay, so that's my final answer there. Okay, we're going to do one more just to show that the steps are always exactly the same. Okay, so Paul earns 70,000 per annum. He has a standard rate cut off of 34,500. He pays tax at a standard rate of 21% and 42% on the remainder of, I should say, his earnings. Right. His earnings. Okay. His tax credit is 4,300. Union fees are deducted from his income, an amount of 450. Calculate his net income. Okay, so we're going to do it all the same again. So first we're going to have to calculate his standard tax. Okay, so standard tax is the cutoff point, which is 34,500, multiplied by the standard rate, which this time is 21%, so 0.21. That gives me 7,245. Okay, I'm going to put a box around that. We're going to come back to that in a minute. Then we're going to calculate his income above cutoff. Okay, so how much more does he earn than the cutoff? So he earns 70,000 in total. We'll subtract the cutoff. So he earns 35,500 more than the cutoff. Okay, we haven't taxed that yet, so we need to tax that at the higher rate. So his higher tax is 35,500 multiplied by 0.42. And that gives us 14,910. Okay, again, put a box around that. That's going to be important. We've calculated his standard tax and his higher tax. So we're going to add those together to get my gross tax. Okay, so that's his gross tax. Okay, so basically there I've just used the first three formulas, okay, to get down as far as gross tax. Now we need to calculate his tax payable. Okay, so we're going using formula 4. So tax payable. Okay, so someone is telling him that he needs to pay 21,155, but really there's a little bit he can take off. So he can take off 4,300. That will mean he'll actually have to pay 17,855. Okay, so that's the amount of tax he really has to pay. He doesn't have to pay the big number, he can take a little bit off of it. Okay, now we're going to find his net income then. So his gross income was 70,000. We need to subtract his tax and any other deductions. Go back to the question. We see his union fees are deducted as well, and they come to €450. Okay, so it'll be 70,000 minus 17,855 minus 450. So really, what he gets into his pocket is 51,695. Okay, so what you really need to practice is structuring these questions. Okay, this second question and this first question, okay, nearly exactly the same thing. Okay, you'll notice when you're doing these questions as well that the numbers are always quite similar. So the standard rate is always 21, 20, 22, and the higher rate is always around 40, 41, 42. Okay, tax credit's usually similar enough as well, as is the standard cutoff point. Okay, because these are the real numbers that are used in real life, okay, or close enough to them as possible. So the numbers will always be fairly similar. The only thing that will really vary is the deductions and their gross income, so kind of their starting income. Now we're going to look at two exam questions from this. what the exam questions actually do is they tend to break it up into parts. So this first one here was actually the 2022 question, okay? So if you want to pause here, take a look at the question, give it a go, and then resume the video, and I'll be going through the solution. So Jane has a gross annual income of 56,000. She pays income tax on her gross income at a rate of 20% on the first 44,300 and 40% on the balance. Work out Jane's annual income tax at each of these two rates. Okay, now they didn't use the words here that we were using before, okay, but really this 44,000, that's the cutoff. This is going to be the standard rate, the 20%, and then this is going to be the higher. Okay, you should recognise those numbers are very similar to what we had been using anyway. Okay, so 20% on the first 44,300. So we're just going to calculate 20% of 44,300. Okay, that's going to give me 8,860. So that's how much income tax she must pay on the first chunk of her earnings. But then on the remainder, so on the extra bit she earns, she needs to pay 40% tax. So we need to find the extra bit she earns first. So we'll subtract 44,300. So the extra bit she earns over the cutoff is 11,700, and she needs to pay tax on that at the higher rate. So on the higher rate bit, she needs to pay 4,680. Okay, so there, that broke it down for us. Sometimes people actually find that more confusing, but remember, it's still part of the big long method we were doing a minute ago. They just have to break it up into sections. Now, Jane has annual tax credits of 3,300. Work out Jane's annual take-home pay. So take-home pay is another word for her net income. So tax credits, remember, tax credits are a good thing. So someone is telling her that her gross tax, or the amount she should be paying, is 8,860 plus 4,680. So that's 13,540. Then her tax credits like a present, they're a good thing, so she doesn't have to pay that full amount of 13,540. She can subtract 3,300 to get 10,240. Okay, so that's her tax payable. Okay, so then her annual take-home pay, or her net income, is her gross income, which up at the top there is 56,000, minus the tax she must pay, so that's 10,240. Okay, so that gives me her take-home pay, or her net income, to be 45,760. Okay, so a really straightforward question there. Okay, if you know your basics, that question should all have fallen together quite nicely. Okay, I'm going to look at one more then. Again, extremely similar. Okay, so Katie has a gross income of 52,460. 8.5% of this is deducted in pension contributions. The amount that is left is Katie's taxable income. Work out the taxable income after the pension contribution has been deducted. Okay, so really what we need to do, we need to take away that 8.5%. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to find 8.5% of 52,460. Now, this is kind of a tricky percentage to find, so you get to know that 20% is 0.2, 40% is 0.4. For this one, we're just going to divide by 100 in our calculation to make sure we get it right. Okay, so I get out that's 0.085. Okay, so we're going to do 52,460 multiplied by 0.085. That gives me 4459.1. Okay, now that's not my answer. That's not the income she's left with. Okay, that's the amount that comes out for income for the pension. So to find the amount she's left with, then we're going to do 52,460 minus 4,459.1. So Okay, so the amount she's left with after the pension is deducted is 48,000.9. Okay, so basically there you were finding 8.5% and then deducting it from your gross income. Now, next part, to take a read of this question, okay? Again, we should start noticing similarities. So she pays income tax on her taxable income. So her taxable income from the question above here is 48,000.9. 20% on the first 34,000, so that's her cut-off, and 40% on the remainder. She has tax credits of 4,200. Work out her net income. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do the standard tax first. So standard tax is on the cut-off, and it's 20%. So that's 6,800. We're going to pay the higher tax then. So we need to find out how much over the cutoff she earns. So in total, her taxable income was 48,000.9. We find out how much over the cutoff she's earning. So she's earning 14,000.9 over the standard cutoff, so that needs to be taxed at 40%. Okay, so I get out 5,600.36. Okay, so her gross tax then is going to be those added together. So plus 6,800. That will give me, in total, she should be paying 12,400.36 in her gross tax. Now, that's not the real answer because she has some tax credits. Remember, tax credits are a good thing, so subtract. So tax payable is 12,436 minus 4,200. And that gives me the total amount of tax she should be paying is 8,200.36. Okay, now we need to find her net income. So her net income then will just be her gross income. Okay, so that will be her 48,000.9 minus 8,236. Which will be 39799.64. Okay, so a lovely question there again, a little bit of normal percentages and then going into our, I guess, the proper income tax section of it. Okay, now, what we're going to do next is move on to USC. Okay, USC is a different type of tax. It's called Universal Social Charge. You may have come across it if you're studying business. This is slightly different to calculate, okay? It's divided up into blocks. You'll be given a table similar to the table there on the page, okay? So basically it divides your income into chunks, okay? So on the first €12,012, you pay 0.5% of your income, you pay that in USC. Then on the next chunk, so anything you earn between €12,012 to €19,874, you pay 2% of that chunk in USC, and so on. Okay, so we're just going to do one example of this because if you can do one example, you should be able to do them all. Okay, so we're going to calculate the amount of USC that must be paid when someone earns 60,000 per annum. Okay, so what I usually do, I go up to my table. Okay, that table will be given to you. You don't need to learn off any of these numbers. So we'll go up to our table and I'm like, okay, she's going to have to pay all of this first chunk. Okay, because he or she earns more than €12,012. They're also going to have to pay all of that second chunk because they earn more than 19,000. Okay, and then they're going to have to pay some of this. Okay, so we're not going to have to go all the way up to this number. Okay, we just have to go up to the 60,000. Okay, so I'm going to label this as chunk 1, chunk 2, and chunk 3. Okay, so in the first section, she needs to pay 0.5% of her first €12,012. Okay, so that's reasonably easy to calculate. So 1, 2, multiplied by, now 0.5%, divide by 100 to get that as a decimal. So 0.5 divided by 100 will give me that to be 0.005. Okay, now these can get a little bit complicated changing from decimals to percentages and percentages to decimals, especially when the number is that small. Okay, so what I could actually do here, it's a button on your calculator, so 0.5%. Now, so we're going to type in 12012 multiplied by 0.5. Now, you need to find the percentage button on your calculator. Okay, so shift, and then on my calculator, I press shift, and then it's the left-hand bracket button. Okay, and I get out 60.06. Okay, so to get this, it's shift and then find the percentage button. Okay, that kind of is a bit of a shortcut. It means you don't have to change it to a decimal. Okay, now usually I change it to a decimal when the numbers are nice. It's just that's kind of difficult to change into a decimal. Okay, but I'm going to do it the normal way for the other ones. Up to you which method you choose. Okay, so then for the second chunk. Okay, so anything she earns between €12,012 and €19,874. So she earns all that chunk. So I need to find out how much is in that chunk. So it'd be 19,874 minus 12,012. Okay, so inside in that chunk there's €7,862, and she must pay 2% of that in USC. So we're going to do 7,862 multiplied by, now again you could do 2%, put that into your calculator, or you could change to a decimal. I'm going to go 0.02. So 7,862 by 0.02, or by 2%, will give me 157.24. Okay, so that's the USC she must pay on that middle chunk. Okay, and on the last chunk then, we need to find out how much is in the third section. Okay, so we need to find out how much is between 19,874 to her income, which is 60,000. We can ignore this number because she doesn't earn up to that number. So we're going to do 60,000. Okay, so we're going to find out how much is in between there. Okay, so in there is 40,126. And on that 40,126, she needs to pay 4.5%. So that'll be 0.045. That gives me 1,805.67. Okay, so that's the income tax she must pay on the third chunk. You could have also multiplied there by 4.5 and pressed the percent button on your calculator. Okay, now to find the total, all we do is we add up all those boxes. Okay, so add. Okay, so that will give me your total USC is 2022.97. Okay, all that is another tax that must be paid. The calculations will always be the same. The only numbers that can change, so these percentage numbers up here might change slightly, as might these kind of cutoffs, but really the only thing that will change is the income of the person. Okay, that just affects, it's usually this number you end up changing, how far into the third chunk they earn. Okay, so if you can do that example, you can basically do every USC example. Okay, now this is the part that people sometimes kind of forget about the formula. Okay, so all those formulas that we did for income tax, so income tax is the standard rate cut off by the standard rate, etc., they aren't given to you. Okay, you need to know those, you need to know how to work with those. But this formula here is given to you. It's on page 30 of your formula book. Okay, so it says that f is equal to p 1 plus I to the power of t. Okay, now what do all those letters mean? So the letters are actually given to you. So this explanation is given to you as well. Okay, so f is the final value and p is the present value. Okay, I like thinking of present value as the original. Okay, I is interest. What they don't tell you is really important. That must be in decimal form. Okay, they'll usually give it to you as a percentage. You need to change to decimal, and then T is time, so usually years. Okay, when to use this formula? Anytime you really see investments or loans. Okay, so they're kind of your buzzwords here. So investment, loan, savings, or if it mentions anything about compound, then you always use it. Okay, so we'll try these first two questions. They're relatively straightforward. They're just using the formula. So 16,000 was invested at 3% for 6 years. Okay, so 16,000, that was the original. Okay, 3%, that's my I, and 6 years will be T. Calculate the value of the investment after this time. Okay, what we're looking for then, the value after the time, that's going to be my final. Okay, so I'll always write down F is equal to P 1 plus I to the power of T, because remember you can get marks for writing down your formula or writing down the correct formula. I'm going to write down what each letter is. So F is the final amount, that's what we're looking for, so I'm just going to put a question mark. P is the original, so the original amount invested was 16,000. I is the interest as a decimal. Okay, so to do that I'm going to divide 3 by 100 to make it into a decimal. That'll be 0.03, and T is time, so it's going to be 6. Now I'm just going to put that into my formula. So F is equal to 16,000, 1 plus 0.03, all to the power 6. F is equal to, I'm just going to put that straight into my calculator the way it is, brackets and everything. Okay, so practice here with your calculator, make sure you can do this and that you're getting out the same answer that I get out here. Okay, so after the 6 years, that 16,000 will actually be worth 19,104.834. Okay, when I round that to 2 decimal places. For money in general, the rule is round to 2 decimal places. Okay, because cents only go to 2 decimal places. Okay, same thing here again now. So 10,000 was borrowed at 4% for 5 years. Calculate the final value of the loan. Okay, so word loan is mentioned, so that kind of gives you the hint that you need to use the formula. Okay, so originally 10,000 was borrowed, so that's the original value, so I'm going to call that P. I then is your interest rate. We're not going to use that, we're going to change that to 0.04. For 5 years, so that's my time. Calculate the final value. So again, write down your formula. Okay, then we've P is equal to 10,000. F is what we're looking for, so that'll be my question mark. I is equal to 0.04. T is equal to 5. Calculate the final value. So again, we'll just plug this straight in. Power of 5. Pop that into your calculator. Okay, I get out at the end the final value. So what they'll actually have to pay on that loan is 12,166.53, again rounding to 2 decimal places. Okay, so that's just very straightforward using the formula. They're going to use these slightly different questions now where we're not looking for F, we might be looking for P or for I. Okay, so we're going to try this one here. So find the amount to the nearest cent. Okay, that means we're going to round to 2 decimal places. That must be invested at a rate of 6%. So that's my I. Change it to a decimal straight away. That's 0.06. So find the amount to the nearest cent that must be invested at a rate of 6% to, sorry, I don't know what that says there. To get, I shouldn't say, I should say to get 2,500 euro in 5 years' time. So that's my T. So I is 0.06. T is equal to 5. What else do we know? The final value we want is equal to 2,500. So what am I missing? I'm missing P. Okay, so I'm missing the original amount that needs to be invested. Okay, I'm going to write down my formula as always. So F is equal to P 1 plus I to the power T, and I'm going to fill in what I know. So I know 2,500. We don't know what P is. We know I is 0.06, and we know time is 5 years. Now I'm going to put what I can into my calculator. So I'm going to put all of that bracket there into my calculator. Okay, so I'm going to have 1.06 all to the power 5. That gives me, now, big long decimal. We're going to go to 3 we'll go to 4 decimal places here. Okay, now I'm going to rewrite this just to put the number in front of the letter like we're used to. Okay, now whenever I'm seeing this and like the numbers are a little bit awkward, what I always do, what would you do if it was easy algebra? So if I had 10 is equal to 2x, okay, I'd divide both sides by 2, so I'd have 10 divided by 2 is equal to x. Okay, this is the same thing here, just as the number looks a little bit messier. So we're going to divide both sides by 1.3382 is equal to p. So p is equal to, put that into my calculator, so 2500 divided by 1.3382. Okay, I get out 1868.18. Okay, so if I invest €1,868.18 into a bank and say they offer me an interest rate of 6% every year, in 5 years' time, my original number, so my original €1,868 will actually be worth €2,500. Now we're going to look at currency conversions. So this is maybe moving between euros and pounds or euros and dollars. Okay, super common exam question, and it's also really handy in real life if you ever go traveling anywhere. So we'll have a look at 2 questions first, and then we'll look at 2 exam questions on this. So on the day Liam is traveling to London, €1, the exchange rate is €1 is 0.84 pounds. He wants to change €200 into sterling. How much will he get? Okay, so how much will he get in sterling? Okay, so when I do this, I set it up using arrows. So I'm going to write down my original exchange rate. So €1 is 0.84 sterling. Okay, what I want to do, I want to make this €200. Okay, so how do I go from €1 to €200? I multiply by 200. So we'll have to do the same thing here. So 0.84 by 200 is 168. Okay, so if he gives in €200 into the currency exchange, he will get out £168 sterling. Okay, now another one. This day last year, €1 was, that's the dollar symbol, so $1.36. How much would you receive in euro in exchange for $129.20. Okay, now we want to make this 129.20. We don't know what that will be. Okay, now how do I go from 1.36 to 129.20? Okay, I don't know. Now there's a few ways to do this calculation, but I think it makes the most sense going this way. Okay, so we want to go from 136 to 129.20. Now I have no idea how to do that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make it 1. Okay, so how would I go from 1.36 to 1? You just divide by 1.36. Do the same thing to the other side. Okay, so 1 divided by 1.36 gives me, we'll leave it as a fraction, that's 25 all over 34. Now, this looks really messy, but my last calculation is going to be super easy. How do I go from 1 to 129.20? You'd multiply by 129.20. So we're going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to multiply that fraction by 129.20 to get out 95. Okay, so €95 will give you 129.20. Okay, so when he exchanges $129.20, you'll get out €95. Okay, so I like doing that with the arrows, figuring out what you want. So here I want to go from $1.36 to 129.20. I don't know how to do that, so I'm going to first make it 1 and then go on. Sometimes it's a little bit more simple, you don't have to do that kind of middle step. Okay, so we're going to look at the calculations now for the exam questions. So the group has booked a hotel in Boston for 5 nights at a cost of $190 per room per night. Okay, Emma plans to share with 2 others, and the cost of the hotel room will be divided equally between them. Okay, so a lot of information there. So one room costs $190 and it's going to be shared between 3 people. So to find the cost per person, we're going to divide by 3, which will give me 63.33. Okay, that's the cost per night. Now, I haven't really read the question yet. I've just read that first bit and figured out some information. So that's my cost per night. Okay. Work out the cost of Emma's hotel room for her stay in Boston in euros. Okay. So we're given our conversion here. So we're given €1 is $1.2. Okay. Now, we want to know how many euros is $63.33. Okay, now, technically what I have to do here, I have to go from 120 to 63.33. I have no idea what I'll multiply 120 by to get to 63.33. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to find $1. Okay, and I'm going to find out how many euros that is. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to divide 120 by 120 to get 1. Do the same thing to the other side. So 1 divided by 1.2 will give me 5/6. Okay, now you could change that to a decimal if you want, but we'll leave it as a fraction. So 5/6 euros. Okay, so 5/6 of a euro is $1. So now to go from $1 to 63.33, you'll multiply by 63.33. Okay, so by 63.33, and we get out that that is 52.775. Now, if someone told you the cost of your hotel room was €52 and that many cent, okay, you'd look at them a bit funny because we don't have cents to 3 decimal places. So really that's going to be €52.78. Okay. So kind of 2 steps there. First, finding the cost per night and then doing your currency conversion. But remember, there are 10 marks. So this finding the cost per night for Emma, when she's sharing with 2 others, dividing by 3, that would probably be maybe 3 out of 10 marks. Okay. So remember, your 10 marks you're building all the time. So even if you're not getting out all the correct answers, you're still probably doing quite well if you're getting your attempt marks. Okay. Just look at one other question then. So Fruitex and Juicy are 2 drinks. A shop buys cartons of Fruitex from the UK. In December, the exchange rate was €1 was equal to that. The shop brought Fruitex for £380. Find the price of the Fruitex in euro. Give your answer correct to the nearest cent. Okay, again, we'll write down our exchange rate. So €1 is 0.7241. Shop bought, so we need to change this into £380 is equal to how many euro? Now again, how do I go from that to from 0.7241 to 380? No idea. So we're going to go to 1 first. Okay, to go from there, I'm going to divide by 0.7241. We'll do the same thing at this side. So 1 divided by 0.7241. Now, that gives me a big long decimal. I'm just going to write it down. So 1.38102472. Remember, we'll be rounding anyway. And then to go from 1 to 380, we'll multiply by 380. So multiply that answer by 380, and we get out 524.789. Now, I wanted to the nearest cent. Okay, that means 2 decimal places. So really, my answer will be 524.79. Okay, so £380 is 524.79 euro. Okay, so all those currency conversion questions, they take a little bit of practice. If you look at any past exam questions, it's a super common question. Okay, usually kind of a part A or a part B, about 10 marks or so. Okay, so super common, really important to be able to know, and again, it's a really handy life skill as well. Okay, now the last section is profit and loss. Okay, so profit, okay, is how much money you make from selling something. Okay, so if I buy a bar of chocolate for €2 and I sell it to you for €3, I'll make a profit of €1. Okay, so it's the selling price minus the cost price. Okay, now if you get out a negative answer, you haven't made a profit, you've made a loss. Okay, that's where that comes in. Now, there are 2 formulas here. Okay, percentage markup and percentage margin. Now, these are very difficult to learn because they're very similar. When we look at the exam question now, we're going to see that hopefully they will give you a hint as to which one to use. So does the cost price go on the bottom or the selling price? Okay, we're going to go straight in. We're just going to look at 2 exam questions on this. So Millie sells each cake for $7.50. This gives her a profit of 20%. Work out how much it costs Millie to make each cake. Now, obviously there was a previous part to this question. It wasn't really to do with what we've covered, so I just cut it off. Okay, but Millie sells each cake for $7.50. This gives her a profit of 20%. Okay, so my selling price is equal to $7.50. Okay, now what my selling price is, okay, it's the cost plus the profit. Okay, so we're expecting her to, like, this cost of each cake is going to be less than $7.50. Okay, now what we're looking for is the cost price. Okay, so the selling price is the cost plus 20%. Okay, now what she actually sold it for then is 120%. Because she sold it for the cost price and then added on 20%. So that would be 120%. So we get $7.50 is equal to 120%. Now, we need to get that down to 100. Okay, so we want 100%. Okay, now how again do I go from 120 to 100? No idea. So I'm going to use the same arrow technique I used for the currency. So first we're going to find 1%. And then we're going to go to 100%. So to go from 120 to 1, we'll divide by 120. We're going to do the same thing to this side. 7.5 divided by 120 gives me 0.0625. But to go from 1% to 100%, we'd multiply by 100. So we'll do the same thing there. Okay, that gives me 6.25. Okay, now, does that answer sound believable? To have a cost of €6.25 and to sell it for $7.50. Okay, I think that sounds like a reasonable selling price. Okay, so she's making just over €1 of profit. So €1.25 profit every single time. Okay, always make sure when you're doing these that your answer sounds believable, because these are real life problems. Okay, so when your answer, if I got that it only cost her €1 to make the cake, okay, I'd be thinking, God, that's a lot of profit she's making from that. So that may not be too believable. Okay, or if I got that her cost price was €9 and then she was selling it for $7.50, then she'd actually be selling it as a loss, so that also wouldn't be believable. Okay, so always just check that your answer makes sense. Now, we're going to do one of these questions then on markup and profit. Okay, here they kind of told us nice and clearly that what the definitions mean, which would be really nice of them to do because they are quite difficult to learn. So a shop buys t-shirts for €25 and sells them for €49. Find the markup of the t-shirts, and then they tell us markup is profit as a percentage of cost price. Okay, so first anyway we're going to have to find the profit. Okay, so their selling price is 49, their cost price is 25, so 49 minus 25 will be €24. So on every t-shirt they sell, they make a €24 profit. Now, if we want to write this as markup, so markup, and they tell us here in the question, it's profit as a percentage of cost price. So the cost price was €25. Okay, to make anything into a percentage, you just multiply by 100. So that gives me a 0.96% markup. Okay, but now we're looking for the margin. Okay, this is going to be my profit, which is €24, as a percentage of selling price, which is 49. And again, we want it as a percentage, so multiply by 100. So 24 divided by 49, multiply by 100. That gives me a margin of 48.97. It says to the nearest percent, so that'll be 49%. Okay, so you'd hope that maybe they might give you a little bit of a hint of which number to use. If not, you do need to go back and learn these percentage profit and margin formulas. So just as we come to the end of this video, I'm just going to leave you with some tips. So first thing, become familiar with the formulas. Okay, so know that the compound interest formula is inside in your formula book. Know that none of the other ones are. Okay, so you need to learn them. The best way to learn them is just to practice using them. Okay, and then you'll actually forget what formulas you're using. You're just going to know what to do with the numbers. Okay, so practice using the formulas, become familiar with them, the keywords as well. Okay, so what is income tax, what is your standard tax, etc. Okay, read the questions carefully and pick out the key numbers. So I'd have a highlighter with me doing these questions and I'd be highlighting all the key numbers. Remember, they very rarely give you a number just for fun. Okay, all the numbers, the percentages they give you, you'll have to use somewhere in the question. So make sure all the numbers you've highlighted are used somewhere in the question. Okay, and then finally, practice, particularly past exam questions, sample papers, any exam questions you can get your hands on. Okay, follow the trends. So like, for example, income tax is something that comes up so regularly. Okay, so I definitely know how to do that. You can nearly learn off your method for that. Similarly with currency exchange, that comes up all the time. The questions are always the same. Okay, and then finally, just pick out the other key questions, practice the questions. Some of the questions that come up, you're basically using your everyday knowledge. So finding sale prices, etc. That can come up in financial maths as well. Okay, so think about them in real life and make sure your answers make sense. So I hope you found this session helpful and best of luck with your studies.